All camp is underway. I am back at work, and we have a lot to catch up on over the next few episodes. So let's get going. Welcome into One More Night, a UCF podcast, one team, one heartbeat. This is Coach Wolf, and let's get back to our five things we're going to cover today. Number one, we're going to give an update on all these court rulings dealing with eligibility. Second thing is we're going to talk about a couple of rule updates that I was interested in that came through over the summer. Three, we're going to talk about the start of fall camp. It's underway. What do we know so far? Number four, whose job is it to bring the energy? And the last and fifth thing, we're going to talk about inconsistencies of talent between P4 and G6, so Power Four and Group of Six. All right, guys. Well, first of all, sorry I did not get a weekday one out. Start of pre-planning, got pretty busy, wasn't able to get anything out. And just there's so much content right now. I had to actually kind of narrow down exactly what I wanted to talk about. So took the weekend to kind of think about that. Going to get this post out. Hopefully we'll get back to that midweek posting. It's just crazy when it's the start of the school year. But the first thing, again, we wanted to talk about was the update on all these court rulings. And it seems like the summer has been full of just what are we dealing with in the courts, because you had the whole Sorsby thing pretty much from April all the way to Big 12 Media Day. And then Big 12 Media Day kind of, shifted that thing over. We started, talking about more of the season, started to get, ready for the hype of fall camp. And then, we also had a couple of things there. And then, of course, I kind of stepped out of the day to day to do that 30 and 3, looking back over the last 3 decades as we get, ready to start our 20th year in the bounce house. So the last thing that came out here was really this past, a week ago Friday. So just about 10 days ago, there was an eligibility issue when the 5 for 5 came out with the ones that were 2022 high school graduates. So there was an argument that they made it live July 1st. If seniors had finished playing last year, they were ineligible for the fifth year. They have been in the courts arguing the fact that, when they came in, players were getting that additional year due to 2020 COVID. So they were kind of getting that 5 years, that they're kind of being left out of this. So there's been some injunctions, some things have lifted. There's been some, a lot of questions of how this works, especially in such a late thing. This should have been something that was probably thought about well before, last week going into the 1st of August. But here's some of the things that it does. It's granting permission for those that have graduated to be able to go and continue their career as a college athlete. Uh, it affects a couple of ours, and we'll talk about those. But then, just to kind of get a general overview, if you have that eligibility, like you only played since 2020, you did 4, that they're going to grant that fifth year, you could go back and you can play. The problem is you can only go play for the school that you were last with because the portal's not open. So unless a senior entered the portal, kind of like in basketball with JaMychal Stillwell really wanting to fight for that next year of eligibility. JaMychal went ahead and put in the portal. I don't know if his lawyer had that kind of foresight to say this, let's put our name in here just so we're in there so we can make just some decisions. And we'll get to him in a moment. But what this does is, we had really a couple of them that did that. And of course, Malachi in the NFL, Nigel E. Kelly's on a roster, but if he wasn't signed, if he come back, really don't think he would be there. But there's two that have been in the news with football for us, and that is Cole Klosnowski. He was a linebacker last year, and Philip Dunham, who was a cornerback in the secondary last year. Now, looking at our linebacker room, there were some people that transferred in, probably looking to be that, secondhand fiddle to Lewis Carter. And with Cole coming back, he was, not in pads, but he was in doing some workouts. Looks like he's getting registered for school. Looks like that may happen. I mean, the coaches have pretty much said, he's at the bottom of the rung right now because we don't know what he's done. What's his physical ability? I know he was trying out to continue his career, but, he hasn't been with our team and our chemistry, but, could possibly work back up. I know that may ruffle some feathers with some people with in the linebacker room. But I mean, Cole was very productive last year alongside Lewis. They played together. That would be, pretty much the same scheme. It would be a very good addition to the UCF defense. Now, Philip Dunham, and if you don't remember who he was, just look back at the Houston game. He was the one that had the 3 interceptions with the one return for a touchdown. An excellent player. And this is where I feel like UCF's got too many people in the, you know, defensive backfield room. There's probably not a lot of space for him, even though he's a great player. There's also other great players in that room. So I think that may pose a problem for somebody like Philip to come back. And this is where it's kind of unfair if UCF, doesn't have room for him and he didn't enter the portal, then he can't play. And I think that's a disservice to some of the players as well because they didn't know they needed to do this. So I'm curious to see what happens with that. And even if Phillips, trying to come back, but I know that we're not the only team facing this. And will UCF go out and grab some more people from the portal if they have needs? Maybe, but I mean, Scott's been really preaching about chemistry and all that, and I just feel like there's an upgrade at a lot of positions, and not sure. I mean, the only one that I hear constantly being mentioned is the offensive line. Maybe there's somebody there. It seems like maybe that's where the least amount of depth we have, and kind of more uncertainty. But that's kind of what's so bad about if these players are not in the portal and their other team that didn't make room for them, then what do they do? Now, let's go to Jamichael Stillwell. Now, I reported back on before I did my little 30 and 3 episodes that, Jamichael was tweeting out, hey, looks like it's going to happen, ready to be a Knight again. And it comes to find out that he is looking now and not becoming a Knight. If all this goes through and he gets that 5th year, it looks like he's going to be a Texas Tech Red Raider. Now, he did not, make this decision and it come with no blowback. A lot of people upset. Even his former teammate Themis Folks, which I would have rather see these guys not air it out in social media, just text each other or talk to each other. But Themis was like once a Knight, always a Knight, and then Jermichael's kind of like, well, you were a Knight for 1 year, like you were bouncing around. But I really think that's just how Themis feels about Johnny, and I think he really wanted Jermichael there. But I think you have to look at it out of another lens. It's not that I don't think Jermichael didn't want to be a Knight, but it's one of those things where I feel like, you know, yeah, he may have hurt some feelings of some people, but he's got to do also what's best for him as far as financially and, maybe playtime. And I know that may sound crazy, like, well, him and Bull would be the front court. What are you talking about? Well, Dawkins didn't go into the offseason thinking I got to leave room for Jermichael in case this happens. He went and filled spots. He went and gave NIL money to other players. So I think that one, the NIL money's not there, and two, I mean, if you've been watching any of the clips, looks like we got a pretty exciting group coming back. And Johnny's done a good job, and I know there's still a lot of new pieces. We have a couple that are coming back, DeJour coming back. You got a couple of returnees that kind of know, yeah, I know Helsway's in there, but you got Bowl, you've got some returning pieces there, not as many as you probably would like, but still, I mean, some of the pieces Johnny put in there, they're looking pretty good. I know it's just summer ball, but I just feel like Johnny's prepared. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest knocks I have on the people that just fire Johnny, fire Johnny. I think Johnny is very big basketball mind, knows what needs to do. I think we are limited to purse strings. I think if we could do what Texas Tech did and you just go to a booster and say, hey, there's this one out there. You remember when UCF beat us at their place? Yeah, this guy was a beast on the boards, really shut down one of our leading scorers before he tore his ACL. Really think this would be a great addition to us, but we need another X amount of money, and their boosters just write it. We don't have that. So until we have that, we're going to lose things like this. Now, like I said, I think a lot of people, but he said, again, he's 22, 23-year-old. I don't know exactly how old he is, but he's got a lot of people in his ear. He also has, trying to make the money. I mean, he wasn't sought after as far as, in the draft or, things like that. I mean, who knows how, is he going to have to play overseas? I mean, they only have so much time and, he battled a lot of injuries. So, I mean, pretty sure, he's just got to do what's best for him. I have no hard feelings. Same with Burks. Um, we're going to get to play them and we just need to beat them. And the last two times we played Texas Tech, we have at their place and at our place. So, I just feel like that's one of those things where it's just really, you know, it's hard to know all the things that are going on behind the scenes and but I don't think Johnny skipped a beat. It's just like when Mustafa Cham left and, he had no hard feelings about it. Now, I know a lot of people didn't like how it happened or whatever. Now he's at Michigan. Like he's chasing the chance to win and also money as well. And unfortunately, we don't have the purse strings there but we're going to continue to compete and Johnny's going to work hard to have his team ready. So, those are some of the things as far as like eligibility and some of the things I wanted to talk about. The second thing is I watched this thing on a lot of the rules updates, and there's not many. I think there was like three or four, but two that stood out to me that really I think that I really liked. The first one was the targeting rule. Now, as we know, if you get called for targeting in the first half, you sit out the rest of the game, you play the next game. But if you get targeting in the second half, not only do you have to go out that game, but you get also the first half of the following game that you're going to play. So, that's the thing is that there's talking about, is this really fair, that kind of thing. And so what they did is they came up with an amendment and it's not huge, but it just says if this is your first offense, like you get a targeting foul in the second half, and this is the first targeting foul you've had all year, we're not going to make you sit out the next game in that first half. We're just going to let you not finish out that game, but if you're perpetual, it's your second or third, you will sit out the following game because you're showing a pattern. And so I thought this was good and kind of got me thinking about the Arizona State game when they were playing Texas and they had somebody in the championship game get called and then they had to go to the playoffs and in that first half didn't have a key player. And it was funny. It was actually for some reason, I don't know if because I was looking up or whatever, it came up and that non-targeting call that they got in that game to Texas that would have kept a drive alive and pushed them down and possibly kicking a winning field goal. I do think that's a great change. I do think it is hard for these defensive players. Sometimes they're not. I mean, it's not. They're not meaning to. Some of them are launching, leading with their head. I mean, some of them are definitely more egregious. And again, if their first offense, they won't get held accountable for that next game. I think that's the right way to do that. Um, so again, didn't have any problems with that change. The one I really also liked was the offensive pass interference. They mirrored it more to what the NFL does. And so defensive pass interference, is basically spot of the foul or 15 yards, whichever one's more for NFL. We just pretty much have 15 yards with the college rule, except if it's like in the end zone. But the defense, I mean, the offense has always been also 15 yards. So, if offense pass interference, like, one of those things where you run a screen or, if they do push off to get advantage or whatever, it's 15 yards. they've reduced it down to 10. And I think that's a fair penalty as well. And so I was glad to see those couple of rule changes. I know there was a couple more, but those were the biggest ones. There's been some with like, and I didn't want to get into it, but it had to do with, what numbers can be out on the punt team, all that kind of stuff. That's just what I consider small potatoes as far as what I was considered. But I thought the targeting and also the pass interference, offense pass interference, those were some good changes there. So. All right, so the third thing is fall camp got underway. Now it's funny because fall camp also got underway when I started pre-planning, but I did Monday come home and catch the pressers and the media that was putting out stuff, and it says a lot about like, okay, you get 15 minutes and then you get watching practice and then you get the media availability. How much do we really know? And so this was one of the things that, I was kind of, listening to and just wanted to kind of see what the perception was from the media that was there. And I took away a couple things from there. First of all, there was some things about, it was good seeing Alonza run out with the quarterbacks because we didn't see it in the spring and watch him actually take the reps. That was good. But there was some people that were questioning, well, the number two quarterback to take reps was Caleb Barnett and not Keywan Jenkins, or AKA Lights, as they call him, because they call him Lights Out, they Lights for short. And do we need to read anything in there? And Scott kind of said, well, Caleb's number two for now. I mean, Keywan could be like maybe the one that got most of the one reps, and Caleb was the one that was getting kind of the two reps. So they just kept him in that role for now, and just trying to figure out, looking at kind of where he was. I think it'll be kind of a battle between Keywan and Caleb. But Caleb's looked pretty good. But again, I think having Alonza out, both of them got a lot of reps. And I just think they kept Caleb with the two, maybe just even for continuity, because he was the one running with the twos most of the time. Then with the threes, they brought in Rocco Marriott, which, they're trying to develop that young freshman. And so that didn't surprise me either. But there's a lot of people trying to read into stuff. I think it's just too far to do that. Another thing they noticed is Duke Watson being the running back that was out there. And I don't think it's, could, I guess one of those things where I didn't really question that, because they brought him in for Louisville, had a great season a year, not last year, but the year before, and then, had some injuries and stuff last year. But it's not surprising to me that I think Duke's more of a slashing type of back. Landon Chambers, I see him more of kind of that bruiser, short yardage, goal line, change of pace, even maybe, when you got a slasher and you just want to maybe pop one up there and have somebody that's a little more stout and physical. I mean, he was a 1,200-yard rusher last year. And then a lot of people are like, well, with Tavion, I don't think we're going to have to worry. I think it's those three. And I think it'll be kind of a Swiss Army knife kind of thing at first, and trying to figure it out. Do I think one of them will show at some point? Yeah. And Scott's talked very highly of Swint. And so I don't really read into too much of the running back room, as well. The wide receivers, I mean, there's three that have been talked about consistently, and that's Josh Deary, who was also graded very high, one of the highest in the Big 12 as far as, you know, as far as preseason, that he will be somebody that makes a difference, and that's just based looking off film, what he's done. And of course, we got Wade Charles and we got Dwayne Thomas Jr. So as much as I think those guys will definitely lead the room, don't fall short of, we got some right behind that too. The depth at receiver is pretty deep. You got Day, who's healthy this year. You got Bibbs, who a little bit longer, athletic receiver. I think he could do some things. And then the freshman, the 4-star Horn, Alonza even shouted out about him. So I think we got about 6 receivers. It's going to be kind of a, who can we go to today kind of thing, who's just, got it. So I really think the running back and receivers, and along with Alonzo, I mean, we have more weapons than we had last year. But the biggest question mark, of course, everybody's talking about it, is the offensive line. And I get it. I get the offensive line. And I'll touch on some things here in just a moment. But the offensive line, I understand, is a big question mark. And one of the things that they noticed first off was that Spell was in there, and he kind of did a little bit of substitution with Paul Rubelt when Rubelt was out last year. That's not somebody they thought would be there first. They really thought Terpstra from the center from Michigan State, but Meadows was in there, and Spell was in there as that kind of like that fifth one that Scott kind of left off. And so, what does that mean? Who knows? Now, I will agree. There's been a lot of people talking about the depth. The depth gets very young very fast. There are some transfers in there and some red shirts and stuff. So, hopefully, we're not near as off as we were. But I just feel like so many of them were down on the offensive line last year, and I do feel like that's the one area we didn't improve as much in, as well as possibly special teams. But again, special teams, I think we got one heck of a kicker. We just don't know what he'll do for extra points and field goals because he just wasn't in that role. But as a, kickoff specialist, I mean, he's got a leg. So he's getting an opportunity that just always was somebody in front of him. I feel all right with that one. I also feel all right with our punter, the Australian punter we're going to have. I feel like there's some questions with the two young long snappers. How consistent can they be? Because it does start there. So that's kind of the question there. So it's really a lot across the offensive line. But you also have to remember last year, the offensive line went through a lot. I mean, they were whole team's trying to learn chemistry, and then you have the passing of Sean Clark. I just felt like it was a very difficult year, but I also feel like the line, gets a little bit of a bad rap. And I just, it's funny because I'll get to it in the next segment. I'll kind of tell you, what I heard on one of the podcasts I listened to today, and why I'm in disagreement with some of the things. I'm optimistic. I know they got to prove it, and I understand that, but that's what I'm saying is I feel like we're so down on it, and that kind of gets into my fourth thing is, you know you know feel like we just got to be positive until there's a reason not to be. I guess that's kind of where I am. Defensively, there's just too much over there. I mean, there's so many players, so much depth and talent over there. It's kind of hard to kind of say. I think numerous different people outside of some of the key positions. Of course, Lewis is definitely a key person on that defense, and heading at that. I mean, it's going to be fun to see, who comes away with all that defense and if Cole actually gets in there again. So, going to take a quick pause, flip over on the last couple of things I have here. But again, just want to say it's just great to be back in the swing of things with school, because I know with school comes not only coaching, which is why I go by the tag Coach Wolf. Is I'm getting excited because we're getting ready for our volleyball season. So I'm already getting excited about tryouts coming up in a couple weeks and things like that. And then just football. I mean, we're 25 days away from kickoff, and just super excited about the season. So I'm on, again, still don't have a sponsor yet, but I am running on Duncan on this Sunday, and getting ready for the school day tomorrow. But let's flip over now, and let's talk about the last two things I wanted to for today. All right, for the fourth thing, it was like, who's responsible to bring the energy? And this is where I want to talk about a lot of those things. And again, this is why I really kind of put this podcast together, because I feel like I have a different perspective, and I feel like it's good to have as many perspectives out there as possible, and then people can choose. Like I said, I've listened to some of the other ones, I hear them, but I have my own thoughts. And one of the things that when the Suns was interviewing Terry, they asked him about, they just don't feel the energy. And of course Terry's like, well, what do you mean? We got the Roth Tower coming in, are those in that little part of the athletic part are just really energized, the team's energized, the coach energized. What are you talking about? And I feel like they have it. They have the energy. They're really more talking about the fans, and also, slash the media. And I just feel like you have to make the decision of what energy you want to bring. It's not the team or the university or the athletic department. Can they do some fun things? Yes. And I mean, they're concentrated on the Roth Tower, and that may not be exciting to you. And I touched on that. I'll never get to go see it either, but it's still, something that should at least build excitement about, it's a different look. I mean, it's just like when they did the black and gold section, the cabanas. I mean, not everybody sits in those sections either, but it's just something different. And the Roth Tower is going to allow, I think, the athletic department to cater to some things, bring in, higher dollar revenue, which I talked about in one of mine. If you can bring in more money, you can do more for even those casual fans that are talking about, well, what is it? What is it for me? But I listened to pretty much three consistent podcasts. That's the Sons of UCF, that's Locked On UCF, and Charge On. Now, Charge On has not put out as much, and Sean talked about just been kind of crazy with some transition. So I kind of picked up on another podcast called Pegasus Podcast, and they're the one that kind of sent me down this rabbit hole a little bit. And it's not that I don't watch others. I watch some Big 12 and I watch some other ones, but those I try to watch at least three other UCF ones to kind of hear kind of what the thoughts are of other people that follow our team. And with Charge On not really saying much until really today, I listened to the one right before I came back here to record this one on some of their thoughts on things. I was listening to the Pegasus podcast. It's one of the first times I've ever listened to it, and they were running down the schedule, and their lack of enthusiasm and just how down they are was concerning to me. It's not that you can't raise some concerns, but to me, you have to be more positive and optimistic. That's to me as a fan. I can be realistic. I mean, do I think we're going to win the Big 12? No. Could we? Absolutely. Everybody has a chance. And if you need any, confirmation on that, Arizona State a few years ago. So don't tell me it can't be done. It can be done. And Arizona State did it, you know, it was definitely, right when, get Texas and Oklahoma weren't here and all that kind of stuff. But then they went up against Texas and down late in the game, battled back, proved that, they belonged. So again, I was like, I mean, I was almost depressed listening to that. And I've listened to probably the one that's most religious to me, and I've talked to him a couple of times, is Trace with the Suns. I really enjoy Adam actually, branched off and doing more podcasting. He calls it, kind of his solo thing that he's doing it. And I've enjoyed just, because most of the time he's more of kind of the MC, just kind of making sure, and it's mainly Elo and Trace. And it's been nice to kind of get to hear a little bit more from Adam. And again, really enjoy talking to Trace because Trace just has more of a, that lock in of, he's there all the time with the media, gets to kind of do that. And he's really just trying to find out as much information so he can disseminate it to us. And so for the most part, I've really enjoyed the Suns podcast. But Trace was kind of a downer a little bit, especially about the offensive line. And we may not get the offensive line right, first couple of years, but we have improved in a lot of other areas of a lot of return defense. I think there's a lot to be positive about. And Trace was kind of down a little bit. And I just watched his one that he did with Adam, and he used the word, he's like, I got a lot of hopium after being there on Monday, and, just a little bit more, energy and stuff. And I think that's what happens. You get in August, you start getting there and you start feeling it. And, he looked a little bit more, positive and all that. So it was good to see that kind of thing. I never have to worry about Mikey G on Locked On. He's going to bring it every day. He sometimes goes a little far than I would take it. I mean, he was like 9-10 wins. I don't see that. But again, he talked about just on his last one, about, that's the way he is. He's going to bring the positive. Now he did get off on a tangent about nobody's going to outwork him, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I feel like the Suns and Locked On probably have the most invested, as far as the connections and the people working for him and stuff like that. But I love you, Mikey G, and I follow you. But to me, I think the Suns have a little bit of a different beat. I know you get a lot of flack for being Auburn, but also I'm an Auburn quasi fan too, growing up in Alabama. And I know that's one you cover as well. And I enjoy your content. But my thing is, it's just like, I'm not going to try to outwork you because I have a job. This is more of a hobby, something I enjoy to do, but something that I may be looking forward to doing in the time when I'm not teaching and coaching. I'm in my 50s now. I know that eventually, when my time is up teaching. I'm not going to just hang around and just sit around the house. Want to try to learn this kind of thing. This is why I've started the podcast. Why I've started now doing YouTube. Uh, it's not fantastic yet, but I'm gonna keep learning and doing more, especially during the summers when I have that time as being a teacher. Keep kind of honing this craft, and I can do that while I'm doing my real job, and then eventually when I do retire, decide that this could be a full-time thing, then that's probably when I would do it. But I don't think it has anything with people not working hard. I think the Suns work very hard. I think a lot of these guys work very hard, and I did like your take on, hey, I'm just trying to be 1% better than me each and every day. Well, that's it, and that's all I'm trying to do is get better each and every day on what I do. I'm not trying to compete with anybody either. Would like some more subscribers and followers. So if any of y'all can keep spreading the news, that would be great, because I do want to try to build this and get a little bit more interaction with people. That's the only thing. People don't comment things. I've had a few ask questions, and I'm hoping to kind of stir that, but don't have to worry about the energy for Mikey G. But the Pegasus really kind of got me down. Now listening to Sean and even Nick was on today, which I haven't seen them together in a while. The charge on. Um, it seems like we're all very optimistic on what the ceiling can be. Is that 8-4? Could we see a 4 or 5 win season? We could, but that would be pretty dire. But every one of us are in agreement about how much better the roster is this year, and I really feel like that's going to make a difference. And that's the thing, is that I still want the fans to remember always to that the atmosphere in the bounce house makes a difference. We have three what I consider very, very tough home Big 12 games that we could possibly lose. And if we will not sell our tickets, no matter what the record is, if we cannot sell our tickets to the opposing teams and get in there and fill our house, it makes a difference whether we have 35,000 or 45,000. It just makes a difference. It really does. It's a hard place to play when we're rowdy. And the thing is you got to be rowdy no matter whether we're, you know, 5-1 or 2-3. Like the record doesn't need to matter. You need to bring it each and every time. We got TCU, we got BYU, we got Arizona State. Those are going to be very, very difficult games in the bounce house. And so we're going to have to bring it. And Baylor's not going to be any slouch because they beat us the last two times. They did the big comeback and they whooped us last year. And just don't know what kind of team they'll have. I mean, I feel good about Bethune-Cookman and Georgia State. I really feel good about Iowa State. I just don't feel like this is the year that they'll be there. But Oklahoma State almost beat us, jumped out 14-0 last year at the end of the season. So it's just going to be interesting. And like I said, I heard they did an offensive thing with Charge On today, kind of echoing the same thing. Feels good about a lot of the other positions minus offensive line. But again, I just feel like you got some pieces working. There's a lot of continuity, and this is where I wanted to go in with the offensive line. And I'm really hoping I can get a guest on that I know coached offensive line, as I'm going to start hopefully getting some guests on now that I've got YouTube and Zoom and stuff. And I'd be curious to hear some other people's take. But the offensive line last year, yes, they had a lot of struggles. But I heard Sean make a comment about how bad the line was in the first game where Cam gets lit up. Sean, go back and watch the clip. Nixon misses picking up the blitz. The back was staying in for protection. He's got to pick that guy up. He missed him. And that's why Cam also got there. Now, as the offensive line, were they great? No. But your backs have a thing to do with that too. And then the thing after that, after Cam was hurt, this is the thing that I thought was crazy. Taven Jackson holds on to the ball too much. You have a certain amount of time you need your offensive line to block, and if you go back and look how many times Taven hitches are just makes a little bit of a lack of decision, that I think Alonza will not have that kind of delay. I think he's going to get the ball out of his hands. We've got some heck of some playmakers. I think that's where you're going to see the difference. And yes, the lack of offensive lines may still be an issue, but if your skill receivers and your quarterback can make quick decisions, it slows some things down as far as off that front. If you're being successful in it, they're going to have to come back off of there. If we can run the ball efficiently, I think Alonzo is a smarter smarter quarterback as far as I felt like Cam sometimes ran too quick that he could have stayed in there and probably made a pass. So it's just all on your perception. And so that's the thing is I feel like the energy has to be brought by us, the fans. I know media is going to cover the media, and I get it, but just like I said before, let's get down on them when we have something to get down on them about. All we have right now is what ifs. We have what it can be. We don't know what this team's going to do until they start going out in the field. And the thing is I'm sick and tired of hearing about the second week about it being a challenge going up to play Pittsburgh. Let's just call it what it is. Pittsburgh's going to have a challenge the second week too, playing a team like UCF. It's not just us having the challenge. Pitt's going to have a challenge. You got to have that mentality. You can't sit here and be like, well, that's going to be the litmus test for us. It's also going to be a litmus test for Pitt. Pitt was very, very good last year, fighting there for the ACC, which is just not that big of a power conference. But I mean, they had a successful season. But I don't look up and down their roster. I look up and down our roster. I'd be worried if I was Pitt. If I was that defense, I'd be worried. And with how well our defense played last year, the offense should be worried. So I look at it in a much different clip than a lot of these other people. I'm so tired of people telling me Pitt's going to be our test. We may be Pitt's test. That's the way I'm going at it. I think TCU 2 weeks later is going to be more of a challenge than Pitt on the road. That's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong, and I'll come on here and say, hey, it's just like Baylor last year. I understood the quarterback and they had some weapons, but I was like, our defense going to shut us down, and they didn't. They did not play well that one. But offensively, we looked like dirt. I mean, we couldn't do anything. Baylor was giving up they were one of the worst defenses in the Big 12. We could only get 3 points on them. So, yeah, I admit when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Okay. I mean, I make some bad, projections, and even my projections this time could be questioned. The way I have us, who I have us winning, and how I have us losing at home a lot, and I'm just saying at the end of the day, I think we get 8 wins somehow, some way. I don't say it's going to go exactly like that, but that's just my projection. But again, it's more positive. Well, this is running late, so let's get to the last and fifth thing. The last thing I wanted to talk about is there's a lot of talk about Power Four versus Group of Six, P4 versus G6, and talking about how the transfers and how you're sitting here and one of the things I hear is Alonza's not getting a lot of you know hype because he came from a Group of Five. Yet you turn over to Oklahoma State, and Drew Mestelmaker is a Heisman candidate. Where did he come from? A Group of Five, North Texas. And did they make the playoffs? No. How many years has Drew been there? He was a redshirt freshman, and then he had a great season last year against what competition? But you got Alonza, who's battled through an injury, been very consistent. Go back and look at his. Now, his completion percentage concerns me a little bit, but that also could be the weapons he has. Look at the weapons he's surrounded by now. Did he have those weapons at James Madison? Yet he still led that team to be able to get to the playoffs and at least knows what it takes. So, this whole thing, and like you said, well, you got to get somebody from a power conference. Okay, well, we did that. Taven Jackson, Indiana. I think he was at Tennessee maybe before that. Garbage. Where's he at? North Texas. Ja'Carry Brown, who I loved, was at Miami. Came up there, couldn't throw it. He's at Rice. And like I said, I'm a JB fan, so I hope he does well. But again, he was at a Power Four, transferred to us, Power Four, wasn't a Power Four quarterback. Probably an argument, the best quarterback, in my opinion, was Cam. He just got hurt, couldn't stay healthy. And he came from Marshall and then FAU. I mean, he was in the Group of Six, came out, and he was probably, that's why he started. I mean, Scott saw what we saw, and he had a couple good games. He just couldn't stay healthy. I think if he stays healthy, he eventually plays over Taven. Taven is hesitant. I'm curious to see what he does at North Texas, but I am rooting for JB. But this whole Mestelmaker thing, he came from it, and so why can't Alonza get the same respect? And then, there's so many people down on Baylor. Well, DJ Lagway was an SEC quarterback. He goes over to Baylor. Shouldn't they just be awesome? But there's questions, will he even be as good as the one that was there? It doesn't make sense why they sit here. Nebraska's quarterback transfers to Oregon as a bench. He's going to be the second. He's sitting. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. And I'll say this, I hear it all the time. Iron sharpens iron. I mean, I think Alonzo's coming in with a very good mindset. He's going to sit here and he's going to be playing against a very good defense every single day. So he's going to get better. He's surrounded by better players. I think the quarterback room is going to push him. I think McKenzie's going to push him. To me, Frost is always a pusher. He's going to push, all of his players to be better, each and every time. So that's kind of my thought process as we go through this. Some of the next episodes that I want to get to, got other fall sports starting with men's and women's soccer. We've got volleyball, and so I definitely want to start looking at some of the schedules and talking about some of those. But excited. We're 25 days out in football, but like I said, there's other things going on, so I'll try to catch up on some of those other things. Keep you informed of fall camp. Keep you just informed of kind of what I have coming up. But just looking forward starting school tomorrow. 2 weeks I have tryouts for my volleyball team and looking forward to getting back into the coaching. But just super excited about this fall, super optimistic. I'm glad to see that there's a little bit more energy and some change of some mentality from some other people that I follow. And again, I don't doubt them. I mean, I get it. I mean, there's you know it's hard because of what we've been through, but just remember, I mean, that first year after Scott, when we lost to Arkansas State and we're losing record, there was a lot of questions. I mean, we go 0-12, 6-6, lose a bowl game. Are we really making the right moves? And then boom, next thing you know. Now, granted, I don't look for us to go undefeated. I mean, Big 12 is just different than where we were in the American. But just let's it's almost like I said that last time when I was answering some questions on the decade. Let's just enjoy where we are now. Let's enjoy the present. Let's hope, put our fandom behind them, and just look forward to hopefully, as Scott says, we're under the radar. Let's look forward to hopefully surprising some people, including ourselves. But I tell you who will not be surprised. Not one player in that locker room and not one coach. They feel like they got a team that can compete, and that's great. And I agree, just like they have to show the nation, they're gonna have to show us too. But I definitely feel like this is a turnaround year, a possibility of getting 8 wins, some great leadership in the quarterback room, great just uniformity, great defense. Like I feel like we got a lot to look forward to, and just like I said, just getting excited. So thanks a lot for tagging along. Again, I'll try to make sure to get the weekday and the weekend out. Like I said, just got a little busy with the start of school. It happens, and I will tell you once the football season starts, I won't miss either one. But hopefully this week will be a little bit smoother, and I'll be able to get the two podcasts out. So thanks a lot for following along, guys. And as always, go Knights, charge on.